it's Kristi Johnson, your host of Giving Tree Surrogacy's podcast From Bump to Bond. Today, we are joined by our guest, Sarah Martin, who is a program manager here at Giving Tree. And we're going to be talking about what happens after you match. So, that milestone of matching is such an exciting one. It's such a huge point in the journey and a lot of emotions and excitement. And then, it's kind of that what next feeling and then they're connected to someone like Sarah on our team, and I would love to hear a little bit of your background, kind of what got you into this industry. It's such a niche, interesting line of work. So how did you get here?
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me today, Kristi, and thanks for asking. Something I love talking about is, the surrogacy world and, of course, case management. My background and career is in mental health and the nonprofit world. So I had almost a 20-year career with a nonprofit before coming here, and with a move, needed to do a career change, and kind of stumbled upon this field. With a job posting, asking in particular people with mental health care backgrounds. And I have a master's degree in counseling and things like that. And I was like, oh, this sounds amazing. And just got the position and have absolutely fallen in love with being able to help these incredible families build their family and work with these amazing surrogates. And it's just such a pleasure. And I absolutely love it. It's been about 3.5 years now. Yeah.
Well, that's, I mean, what a background too. I'm sure that you use that every day, that background of just the mental health and the counseling piece of things, because it is such a unique experience that people are going through in their life. And so to be a part of that, and especially to have those tools to help manage a lot of emotions and all of the things that come with this exciting path. So.
That's what I was just thinking. I'm like, it's a lot of deep breaths and a lot of communication skills.
Yes, yes. So what would you say is the first step after they're matched? Kind of what happens behind the scenes, and what is the next step that the surrogate and the intended parents would experience?
Great question. I always describe, this whole process from onboarding to delivery is there's so much hurry up and wait. And
Mhm.
so we're in another hurry up and wait section. So as soon as they come to case management, they get connected with their case coordinator. There's a lot of, okay, I need this, I need this, I need this. And but I think the most important thing is to your case coordinator is going to ask you to set up a face-to-face meeting. And I think that's one of the most important first steps
Mhm.
is make eye contact, lock eyes with your case coordinator and start talking to them, because this is for the surrogate and the intended parents alike. You're going to be hopefully on a very long journey together. And, really, it's both a professional bond, of course, but also you guys are really going to be in the details of life. And
Mhm.
so I think that's a really important step, is to have that call. And it doesn't have to be very long, but just to make sure, you guys can understand and talk back and forth, because it is so intensive and there's so many details. And so I think
Yeah.
that first step of your case coordinator going over what's next, and giving you that full picture, and then starting to give you the bite size. Okay, this is the next piece, because as soon as you're matched, you're setting up your escrow account, you're getting ready for medical screening. Depending on your clinic's requirements, your case coordinator might be setting up a joint psychological evaluation together. So it's pretty hit the ground running as soon as you get over here after matching.
Yeah, I like that you referenced the bite-sized pieces, because hopefully both parties have been kind of educated and have some sort of expectation of what next steps are, but
Yeah.
it's so much to digest. And so the bite-sized pieces and reminders are very normal. It's not that, we think that people weren't paying attention before. We understand that it's so much to take in, and little reminders or guidance along the way is exactly what their coordinator or case manager is there for.
And I always try to get my journeys, my cases, my surrogates and intended parents focused on the next milestone because I think it's really easy to get ahead of yourself
Mhm.
and it's just really to keep thinking too far ahead. And it's like, let's just take this again, one bite at a time.
Yeah.
Until that first milestone is medical clearance. So it's really about let's all get focused on what we all need to do to make medical screening successfully happen, and
Mhm.
then we'll keep going from there, just so that not so you don't get overwhelmed.
Yeah, what is included in the medical screening? What does that look like for the surrogate, and do the intended parents have to be there?
Great question. Sometimes intended parents can be at the medical screening. Sometimes, things will line up where they happen to, live in the same city as their fertility clinic. And, that's an appropriate time. Maybe the parents don't need to be at the appointment per se, because it's really mostly for the surrogate to
Mhm.
have her ultrasound and blood testing, and if she's partnered, her partner will likely be there with her for that. And but you might want to grab coffee or lunch afterward to have a, since they will be in your city potentially. But medical screening is not one that's necessary for parents to be there. And sometimes I encourage parents really go with your gut on that. But
Mhm.
because this is such, like you said, an emotional process. There's so many emotions involved. It's especially for the parents, they've invested a lot of time and resources. And most of the time, some of these parents have really had a lot of trauma around their family building process. And so sometimes at the medical screening place, it's okay to still have some of that distance there until things feel a little more absolutely certain and you have that clearance. And then I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but for the same as well, I want the intended parents and the surrogate to safeguard their connection to, I always encourage, let's let that happen after legal clearance. Let's get through
Mhm.
medical screening and legal clearance without relationship forming, if possible, just so that everyone kind of has those safeguards around them.
Yeah, because, those what you're referencing are periods of time that, are more what's the word? Like, you're checking off these boxes. It's not as fun, and exciting of a process, and there's a lot that goes into it, and, but it's important. It's not something that can be skipped over, and so it's kind of a period of time that in the hurry up and wait process, that feels like holding your breath, I think is
You literally just took the words out of, I was like, it feels like you're there's so
yeah,
basically until you're graduated to the surrogate's OB, it's a lot of, holding your breath. And
it is, yeah,
yeah,
and I think the surrogates have such a different background than the intended parents
yeah,
typically, and so
yeah,
they are full of excitement and they, the intended parents may be still really dealing with grief even throughout the entire journey or afterwards, that they're carrying, potential loss or grief and working through
absolutely.
that and still trying to be as open as possible to this excitement, but
Right.
also protecting themselves from any kind of letdown. So I think just balancing emotions, respecting each other's boundaries and space. Would you suggest that they talk about that up front when they match of kind of what communication should look like so everyone's on the same page?
Absolutely. And I have some experience in matching as well. And I would always start my match meeting with letting everyone know, okay, this it feels like a first date in a lot of ways. It's a blind date. Everyone's been set up, and there's pressure there. There's a lot of high expectations, and just like a first date or a job interview, everyone has their best foot forward and are being so polite. And that's wonderful, and of
Mhm.
course, but also, so I'm like, this is great, but everyone, please be honest. This is the time to be absolutely honest about what you need and want and expect during this journey.
Mhm.
So, for
Yeah.
example, like if the surrogate is going, listen, I am so excited to be here, but I do have a very full, work and personal life. And so I would like to maybe only, connect over um, appointments and maybe do some relational stuff once a week or something. But other than that, like, please don't be texting me all day, every day.
Right.
And the parents alike, if they're going, listen, I'm a high anxiety person, and it might help me to like check in a lot. go ahead and
Mhm.
say that. Like,
Right.
have those expectations up front so
Yes.
that you don't have, disappointment later. And so just kind of everyone, I think it's really important to be honest about that stuff right up front and not just be, but you hear a lot of, oh, whatever she wants, whatever feels comfortable. And I'm like, do you mean that?
Yes.
They do. And then I always go like,
Yeah.
listen, you guys will have just like any other relationship, it will organically grow to what it is. And,
Mhm.
um, I just say that I just
Yeah,
encourage
just
everyone,
being
let that
open with
happen.
that,
Yeah.
being open with the
Yeah.
process and,
Yeah.
you don't want anyone feeling like after this feeling of like a blind date and then you think, "Oh, I didn't hear from them. Is it me?" And then they start going down the rabbit hole and it's not that. It's just that maybe they're feeling a little too anxious and they didn't want that type of communication, especially up front. So, better to just be open and honest. And it's okay if that changes too. That's not something that we're expecting anyone to stay firm on, well, in the beginning you said this,
Right.
your relationship will hopefully develop and grow over time.
And that's a great use your case manager for those things. Like if you're anxious or nervous or don't quite know how to handle something, before you just jump into it, like that's a
Mhm.
great person to reach out to and go, this is what I'm thinking and feeling.
Yeah,
And they can help you kind of navigate anything that feels tricky.
that's such a great point to use your resources, and that's what they're there for,
Yeah.
to guide you. And it's not, the first time that they've heard it, it won't be the last. So ask all the questions and
Right.
use them
Yeah.
as a resource.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So after medical screening, then everyone would be working on achieving legal clearance. So this can be, again, kind of a hurry up and
Right.
wait.
Yeah.
We're kind of on attorney timelines when it comes to contracts.
Mhm.
What would be a typical time frame, if you can even say? I know it's
Yeah.
so different from each journey, but what's that process look like?
Yeah, and most things we can, we've been doing this for a long time, so we have those ballparks. But and
Yeah.
that's something I can't stress enough to both surrogates and intended parents alike is to I love efficiency. I love to get things going as fast as possible, professionally and personally.
Mhm.
If my husband were here, he would dip in and go, "Oh yeah, we're
Well,
efficient
we
over here." Yeah,
know.
but but that's timeline. I feel like everyone comes into it, the surrogates and intended parents, with a specific timeline, and this is when we want transfer to happen. This is when we want this to happen, and I understand that, and I think having time goals is great. And let's be aware of everyone else's time too, and be courteous and
Mhm.
but hold that timeline loosely because
Right.
this is a high stress situation, but we also want you guys to enjoy as much as possible. And I also, that grain of salt too is especially the parents. You know, they've been wanting this for a long, long time. So they're ready to go. They were ready for that before they got here. And
Yeah.
so I always hold that in the forefront of my mind too. But just for everyone's sake, just try to be open to timeline shifts and changing just for your own emotional well-being
Mhm.
and so you don't set yourself up for disappointment because there's always so many factors happening. The intended parent schedule is happening, fertility clinic schedule is happening, the surrogate's personal schedule is happening. And I actually was I was talking to a surrogate this morning. I'm like, you had no idea when you became a surrogate that a whole group of people would just be constantly obsessed when you were about to start your monthly cycle. Um,
Yes.
she was like, I was just thinking
Love
that. You're getting
the
emails and texts. Have you started
celebrations.
yet? So
Yeah.
so there's just always those kind of things. And then especially with legal, because everyone knows like after legal, things get real. We're going to start
Yeah.
medications. We're going to start the transfer cycle. And that's could be a really exciting part. But so legal can take anywhere. It was a long way for me to say legal can take anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months. Like the fastest I think I've ever seen it go is 2 weeks. And but it can take up to 3 months depending on, we hope not. We don't want it to take that long, but
Right.
I do think it's important that everyone feels really solid and really good about the terms in the agreement. And so sometimes those red line drafts have to go back and forth a couple of times.
Mhm.
And that's okay. I think
Yeah.
sometimes people can start getting worried in that moment too, like, "Ooh, they didn't like that term that I put in," or they and I'm like, "That's okay. Like, let's
Yeah.
talk through these. Again, use your case manager, talk to your attorneys. Like, you
Mhm.
know, I think it's important to really get that right."
Yeah. And just to specify, that the intended parents have an attorney that they're working with, and the surrogate has an attorney for representation. And so there is this back and forth between parties, and that can take a little while. And it could just be someone's schedule. It's not that they're nitpicking,
Right.
what you requested in your
Right.
draft, but it's just, someone's schedule or availability, or somebody got sick.
Exactly.
And so they weren't able to schedule a call to review the changes for an extra week or something like that.
Exactly. But we do try to, keep things moving along as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
And you may get a nudge from your case coordinator going, "Hey, have you seen that email from your attorney? Are you scheduled? And what day is that?"
Mhm.
Because and those messages are because like we're for you, we're on your team, we're trying to get this moving as well and support in any way that we can.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's part of the process too that I think, as case managers, you're more, um, just supportive in the timeline to keep things moving. But if they have questions specifically regarding the contract that you're kind of kicking that back to, you need to discuss this with your attorney, because we are a
Exactly.
neutral, party here, and that is
And we're
between
not attorneys. You don't want our
exactly.
advice on the
Yes.
legal contract. Ask the attorneys.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. So,
Yeah,
I think, part of the process in your role is to again reference them back to discussing things with their attorney, but you're there to support them if they have
exactly.
questions about
Exactly.
timeline, or hey, have you heard
Yep.
from anything on the other side of the journey? So,
And I think there
um,
could be a lot of mystery sometimes about like, what is this
mm,
legal contract? What do you mean we have to be in a legal contract? And
yeah.
I get overly excited about the legal contract because I'm a rule follower. And I'm like, this is our rule book. This is
Mhm,
the legal contract. It can be really stressful, especially for, surrogates, because there's a lot of rules for them. You need to do this and you don't do this and do this at this
mhm,
time and don't do this at this time. And so that can feel a little overwhelming for a surrogate, and which is completely understandable. But again, that's one of those like, let's take a deep breath and really think about no, this is for you. This agreement is just really helps you, it roadmaps everything that you're supposed to do, and it takes the guesswork out of everything.
yeah.
And so it really is this great manual for the surrogacy journey. And, it includes everything like payment schedules and, surrogate, that's for you to, you have the legal document to make sure you get your compensation as you're supposed to.
Mhm,
And for the parents alike, it offers protection for them for, all kinds of things with like that happen at the delivery in the hospital and, you know, um, guardianship stuff. There's so much that gets codified in that document that is really important. And, case coordinators refer back to the legal contract a lot.
mhm.
So I
Yes.
do think it's important to read through your contract, know what it includes. And again, intended parents and surrogates alike, once we have legal clearance, and you're not quite sure about something, use your case coordinator. They're going to be able to answer questions or connect you to someone who needs to.
Mhm. Yes. So once they get legal clearance, then it can be a pretty quick process. Again, depending on where the surrogate is in her cycle, if the clinic has her on birth control pills, that they have a little bit of more control over that cycle. But what are the next steps from there? I think you probably get emails immediately on a lot of cases of, we received our legal clearance today.
Yeah.
When
When's
am
the
I going
perfect?
to transfer?
Exactly. And I love that. I love when people are enthusiastic and ready to go. And that's kind of fun too. I've had a couple legal clearances this past couple weeks, and that's when we really go, okay, you guys start talking. And it's just so fun to see the surrogates and intended parents get to go, okay, that hard stuff is behind us.
Mhm,
Let's start building our relationship. And it's a really nice way to support each other up to transfer as well. But Transfer will look different depending on what your fertility clinic's protocol. So it's something too, in particular with the intended parents. I'm like, ask all those questions first. Like, how do you guys do your calendars? How do you do your scheduling? And
Mhm.
make sure they know. Like, even some clinics will ask you to do a mock cycle. And so, if we can find that information out, out up front, and usually they're great, clinics are great about, all that upfront information as well, but just something to really know. And a mock cycle, for anyone listening who doesn't know, is, when a clinic will say, we're going to do this mock cycle, we're not going to actually go to transfer yet, but we're going to make sure that the medication protocol that we're assigning to the surrogate is effective, so that, and then they just basically after the mock cycle do it again,
Yeah.
and head into transfer. So that can delay the transfer date. Holidays can delay a transfer date.
Mhm.
um, but in general, you're going to jump straight into a medication protocol, and that's going to be around 3 to 4 weeks, and then you're also doing monitoring appointments. And I think that's an easy thing for intended parents to miss, because bless their hearts. In the South. For anyone listening, that I'm in the South. I just said bless your heart. There's so much terminology, and with surrogacy, it's really easy to go, I have no idea what they said or what that meant. Do not be afraid to ask. Be like, what are you talking about? What is a monitoring appointment? Where do they do that? That's a whole thing. The surrogate
Yeah.
during her medication cycle will have multiple outside monitoring appointments where they're getting blood draws to test for their estrogen and progesterone levels. They're getting ultrasounds to make sure that their lining is, if their uterine lining is thickening to where it's optimal for transfer and it has the
Mhm.
right pattern and all of those things. So for surrogates, you need to know, like, those monitoring appointments are really important. Get them scheduled immediately. Your case
Mhm.
coordinator and your fertility clinic coordinator will help make sure that happens. But that's a busy time for you surrogates. You're going to be, for that month, you're going to have about it's quick doctor's appointments. It's quick ultrasound, quick blood
Usually in
draw.
the
But
morning before,
yeah,
work or kids starting their
yeah,
day. So
exactly. And they all want them in the morning. They're like, please make,
yes,
have a million emails that say, please make this appointment as early as possible so
yeah,
that the
like
clinic, because
done.
we have to have same day results. Again,
Mhm.
hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, after that, that month protocol, I love it. Surrogates are always going, when are we going to schedule travel? When are we going to book the plane
Mhm.
ticket to the clinic? I'm like, I know it's killing me too, as someone who likes to do things efficiently.
Mhm.
At some point in the clinic, the intended parents and surrogates should know this as well. Like, the clinics finally go, okay, after several weeks of monitoring, your lining looks great, your hormone levels are wonderful. Now you have the green light to book travel, and we'll get
It's
on it
usually
immediately.
about a week or so before the anticipated
Yeah,
transfer date,
yeah,
right? So it's pretty
yeah.
last minute. I
Uh-huh.
remember going
Yeah,
through this as a surrogate too and
yeah,
thinking, okay, we have a tentative date when they give you your calendar,
yeah,
and you think, okay, but I need to plan. When you plan trips and everything
yeah,
else, it's so counterintuitive,
yeah,
and can
yeah.
be stressful on everyone to
Oh my
wait
gosh. Yes.
close to the time. But that is just how it goes
Yeah,
because
yeah,
every little, blood work result,
mhm,
ultrasound result can determine, what
right,
the timeline would be for the transfer, down to the day of.
yeah,
So very important to attend those appointments, get same day results. I
mhm,
know everyone's always anxiously awaiting the results and saying, "Are they
yeah.
in yet? Are they in yet?" And so I'm sure you kind of feel those questions a lot too. And
When I'm one of those ones going, are they in yet? And sometimes surrogates will get results before they get faxed over, like in a
yeah,
medical portal or something. And, they'll be like, we've got this. I'm like, well, send it to the
I
clinic.
think we were, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like, how do you already have this? It's like, it'll
Mhm.
populate so quickly and then takes a minute to get everything to the clinic. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think that can be, something that everyone gets kind of antsy about. And I would want to say too, don't be discouraged if it's like, oh, we're going to have transfer on the 18th, but you know what, we're gonna push it to that next week because your lining is almost there. So we're gonna adjust your medication protocol and, maybe up some of the medications and see if that helps your lining get to that optimal place.
Yeah.
And so of course we don't wanna spend money on plane tickets and hotels and stuff to like have to cancel it or to
Right.
reschedule, because I'm telling you these days not a lot of that is allowed. So
Right.
we kind of do that fast and furious booking that week before.
And I think it's nice that you reference, like, don't get discouraged
Yeah,
because I know that we get these set dates and plans in our minds, and
yeah,
so it can feel like a letdown, but everything is still going well. It's just going to take an extra week of medication,
that's right.
and then it will be, perfect and right where it needs to be. And it's such a delicate process, and so that's up to the IVF clinic and the IVF doctor to determine when the best timing is because we want it to work. We want it to take
Right.
the first time. You don't want to start over. So let's give it the best chance that we can. At transfer, what should surrogates expect that to look like? And do intended parents have to be there for that?
That's similar to the medical screening appointment. They,
Mhm.
parents can be there at transfer, but you don't have to be. I think that's a good thing. Like, what is the relationship feeling like? What and for surrogates, I'm like, it's okay if the intended parents aren't there. Sometimes they're like, we don't want to be there again. That feels very
Mhm.
stressful for us. They don't want to bring their stressy energy to your transfer day.
Yeah.
And I even had an intended mother recently go, I just don't want her to feel that pressure. I don't want to be there going, I hope this works, like, so she,
Yeah.
and she's like, I'm going to steer clear until, a later
Mhm.
appointment, to safeguard their own emotions and also give the surrogate their space. And something I hear from surrogates a lot is like, "Wow, that was so much faster than I thought it was going to be."
So quick.
It's a really
Yes.
quick appointment. So be prepared for a really quick appointment.
Mhm.
Um,
Say, that's it.
that was it. Yeah, that was it.
Okay.
And the fertility clinics are amazing, and they'll, give you medications to help you feel relaxed. And that's a great reason that you have a support person there with you so that you can take your Valium and not have to drive later and just
Mhm.
be, you know, your job is to show up. You've done all the hard work, and your job is to show up and be as relaxed as possible with your,
Mhm.
go to transfer, eat your french fries, and get your feet up and just relax and
Yeah.
let happen what's going to happen.
And I think that's another positive of having a case manager is that you're supported and someone is helping you
Mhm.
with those travel arrangements, with those appointments and juggling all of it because it can be a lot. And so, that's what you are there for to help her book those things and get everything organized and so that she can focus on just relaxing and putting her feet up, following the clinic's orders of any kind of bed rest and then traveling home and the dreaded 2-week wait happens and
Again,
that's what we
yes,
call it, the dreaded 2-week wait.
another hurry up and wait. Yeah. And what you're saying too is I'm like, this is what the agency is for. We're here to do all the details and
Yeah.
keep everything online so that you can enjoy the pregnancy as much as
Mhm.
possible. And we want this to be a positive, enjoyable experience as much as possible. And so let us be in the details.
So let's assume the transfer took the first time
Yeah.
and pregnancy is achieved. We're confirming that, like we said, the 2-week wait is referring to when your first beta is drawn. So your lab work that will confirm pregnancy or not.
Yeah, we
Again,
do that first at about 10 days after transfer. We'll do the first HCG, and then, hopefully we have, at least 100, the number 100 or over, and then they're going to go again. Surrogates are going to have another appointment 4 days later to get that second beta, and we want to
Mhm.
see those numbers really rising and starting to double. And that's one of those for the parents in particular, but the surrogates as well. I mean, just you could start exhaling a little bit
Mhm.
there when you see
Yeah.
those HCG numbers rise, and that's really exciting.
And then ultrasound to detect heartbeat. When is that done?
That's usually around week 6 of the pregnancy, and so it's a few more weeks later. And again, we're gonna hurry up and wait, hold your breath,
Mhm.
and that's kind of that confirmation. You should be able to, experience the heartbeat at that and see the gestational sac. And that's one of those I kind of give everyone a heads up. That appointment in particular, when it goes well, you can really start to, okay, this is getting real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an exciting milestone, but still can feel stressful for the intended parents that they're getting good news, but they feel like they can't really totally exhale
Right.
because maybe they've been there before. Maybe they've had a heartbeat detected and then had a loss. And so there is a lot of emotion that can come from that. And even guilt of feeling like I can't be excited. And so, is that a time that you really encourage intended parents or surrogates to be reaching out to their case manager for communication about any type of feelings that they may be experiencing that the other party is maybe feeling something different?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's, and I always encourage everyone, we offer, part of our services are, support sessions, support therapy sessions for surrogates. So that's kind of too like, when some of those might start, like if a surrogate's feeling stress in those moments or experienced a tough time with that, reach out to your case coordinator. I mean, they're going to reach out to you too and say, is this something that I can set up for you? I mean, also
Absolutely.
intended parents too, this might be a time for you to engage in professional therapy, but also absolutely reach out to your case coordinator, especially if you're like, I'm not really quite sure how to communicate with the surrogate in
Mhm.
this moment, and let
Yeah.
your case coordinator um, help you feel confident in that.
Throughout the pregnancy, there are, of course, different milestones, just medically speaking, in a pregnancy. I think the biggest ones would be the first OB visit,
Hmm.
and then the 20-week ultrasound.
Yeah.
So when can you kind of talk through a little bit about the steps between what we call transfer of care to OB? What does
Yeah.
that look like?
You know,
How
that's
is OB chosen?
That's a really fun time too, and we here call it graduation. You have to graduate from the fertility clinic to your
Right.
own OB, and of course, we could have a whole nother podcast if you want, Chris, about insurance at another time. But
Oh my gosh, yes.
insurance always, but this is when
Yes.
your surrogate's insurance, whether you had to arrange that for her through the ACA or private insurance, or if she has her own insurance that will cover the surrogacy pregnancy, that's when all of that starts kicking in. And so your case
Mhm,
coordinator will be making sure behind the scenes that, you know, that they're working with an OB that accepts, that's in network with the appropriate
mhm,
insurance. And we really do try for it to be the surrogate's, you know, own OB if possible. And we kind of
mhm.
start there. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, the insurance piece kicks in for her pregnancy care. That is not used throughout the IVF process. None of that is under the insurance plans, and so that is separate. And then once she graduates to her OB, that will take effect.
And that's such a great time. That's when, especially for the surrogate, I'm like, okay, you have done so much work. And this kind of where it starts to feel like a normal pregnancy. And I think that's a
Mhm,
misconception some surrogates can have, in their onboarding. They're like, oh, I can be pregnant in my sleep. Like, this is nothing. I'm like, yeah, yeah. But this is a lot of work, especially up
mhm,
front. To get pregnant, you're going to be doing a lot of work. And so be prepared for that. But this is kind of where things can start to feel more like just a typical pregnancy. And you're going, to your OB once a month. And, it's kind of it until later when, things kind of start to ratchet
yeah.
up. You have more visits.
And
So
their
it's kind
injections
of
stop.
typical.
So that's
Yes.
like such an exciting
Yeah.
milestone for the
Yeah.
surrogates because they're like, okay, now I can stop with the shots and then feel like it's just a regular pregnancy instead of
Exactly.
doing injections every day. So that's an exciting part.
I think that could surprise surrogates and intended parents alike. They're like, "We're still taking medications." I'm like, "We're still taking medications." Yeah, it's usually around that 12-week mark that
For
stops.
weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Every clinic's different and every pregnancy is still different, but that's why you have those monitoring appointments, and
Mhm.
they have their, each clinic has their protocol that they trust and works. And
Yeah.
um, but yeah, that's a big day, is that no more
Mhm.
shots.
And for the 20-week ultrasound, we try to prepare women as they move through the process because that can also be just a time in the journey that is full of a lot of excitement, but also a lot of emotions, a
Mhm.
lot of anxieties can kind of pop up during that time frame because it's not just finding out the gender of the baby, it's also a diagnostic ultrasound and scan. So that is a time that there can be some anxieties and, worries about the results of that scan. And, should the intended parents go? Should they not go? Typically, I don't think many intended parents would attend that because it is local to the surrogate versus the IVF clinic, which is maybe closer to the intended parents at times, not always. But
Right.
um, do you have intended parents that do attend that ultrasound with their surrogate, or is that typically a time that a lot of your cases that they say we're just going to kind of wait anxiously for the results and kind of holding their breath again?
Both, but I do encourage, like, if intended parents, I want to say too, like, intended parents, if you can't go to anything but the delivery, that's okay.
Yeah,
That's so normal. Everyone lives, you might live in another country, you might live across the country. Like,
right.
travel like that is not many people can be off work or away from their family. That's okay. It's
Mhm,
okay if you're not there for any of those things but the delivery intended parents. But if some intended parents will say, if I go to any appointments, what appointment should I go to? I'm like, this one. This is a lot of, because
mhm.
it can be really exciting, but either way, it's going to be a lot of information. And you're going to have, the ultrasound and sonogram and all that stuff. So like is a good one to go if you're trying to plan um, to
And
be
maybe
at a
taking
visit.
a tour of the hospital while you're
Mhm.
there. Usually the surrogate is feeling good at the 20-week mark. She's still getting around really well and feeling good, not too out of breath. I know I struggled with
Oh,
that.
yeah.
And so it's usually a time she feels good, and then they can kind of capitalize on their time
Yeah,
being there and maybe tour the hospital, meet the OB or something like that.
exactly. And that's something, to every OB also has different rules about, can they take pictures? Can you FaceTime? Can you video something? Some are, really easy about that. Some are really strict. So those, are good questions for serious and intended parents to find out pretty quickly so they can have expectations around um, what is allowed at the OB visits.
I think some women, will hear questions about when do I call, who do I call if something happens, if I'm unsure, who do they call? Do they call you? Do they call their OB? Do they call their intended parents? All of the above.
Yeah, absolutely try to call your case coordinator, or depending on when you're in the journey too, especially if you're under the fertility clinic's care and you feel like you have a medical question going on. If it doesn't feel too intense, you can call or text message your case manager, and they can help kind of go, let's call the clinic and ask,
Mhm.
or no, I think you should go to the ER now. This is such a serious thing. I don't especially women, we can just try to be so polite and we don't want to bother anyone. I'm like, never, don't
Yeah.
bother us.
Yeah.
Bother us because we want to make sure you're okay. We want to make sure baby's okay.
Mhm.
But also, like, sometimes if your case coordinator is not available, or if it's the middle of the night, like, go to the emergency room and
Mhm.
make sure. And I'm kind of speaking for all intended parents, but I'm like, they would rather have an ER visit that resulted in not a big deal than you just had not gone and something major happened.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
yeah, but there should be, make sure, and that's something your case coordinator can help you with too. Make sure you have all those phone numbers in your phone ready to go. You have the fertility clinic, you have their after hour or their medications person, you have your OB after hour person, have all those numbers prepared so that you can get quick answers.
That's a great point. Any other tips that you would suggest, as they're progressing through the pregnancy,
Mhm.
whether it's emotional or if it's even just communication between intended parents and the surrogate? Are there certain things that you hear often from either party, and how do you advise?
Sure. I mean, I think a question that I hear all the time is this normal? Is this how this typically goes?
We all wanna just feel like
Yeah.
it's
That's it.
normal, even though you're carrying a baby for someone else. Like, typically, that's not normal in a lot of in a
Right.
lot of
Right.
people's minds, and so it's just so funny that we're
Yeah.
still,
Yeah.
just looking for that
Yeah.
reassurance, I guess.
1,000%. And it's like, however you're feeling right now, that's okay. Those are your feelings. Let's process them.
Yeah.
I think kind of going back full circle is communication is really important. I see a lot of parents and surrogates get tripped up when they assume something. They're like, well, I think the surrogate is feeling like this right now, or I think my intended parents are feeling like this. I'm like,
Mhm.
they might be, but what, especially let me, as your case coordinator, let me help you figure that out. Or like there's just sometimes a lot of missed communication because they're assuming. I like to say it's the story I'm making up about what's happening right now, and this is the scenario that I'm playing out, and it might be way off base. And so,
Mhm.
um, yeah, communication is really important, and use your case coordinator if you're like, I kind of been feeling concerned about something, and that's okay. All those things are okay, and we'll all get through them together.
Yeah. Um, so then as they approach delivery, what does the prep look like? Mostly, I think, for the intended parents because they're traveling, and how do you get them prepared for the arrival of their baby or their babies?
Yeah, very important. And that's, I think, in particular, a conversation you want to have really early when you're working with international parents,
Hmm.
because their travel is going to be a lot longer. They're going to need to be in the States a little longer, just with passports and documentation to get back home and things like that. And so I think it's important to have that plan in place, even when you're, more locally, or centrally located to your surrogate, or it's an
Hmm.
easier, in-state flight or what have you. But kind of start having those plans made early because what if baby did come prematurely and we don't want you scrambling. So kind of have work with your case coordinator to maybe help identify a great Airbnb or hotel. I always encourage Airbnbs or VRBOs or something like
Yeah.
that if possible, just so if you're there for a few weeks or a few days, you're at least in more of a home setting. You're not at a hotel. A hotel is also just fine, but I do encourage setting up, something where there's a refrigerator and a washing
Right.
machine, or like where it
Yes.
just feels more of a home setting.
You can prepare a
Um,
meal. It's cozier. Yeah.
exactly. Especially if you're going to be there for a few days, and
Mhm.
that's an important thing where the case coordinator is really going to help because you want to have everyone communicating together. It's like, all right, what is your OB saying about, like, she's, I think she might go a little early, or sometimes they can kind of anticipate by the way someone's carrying or measuring and things like that.
Mhm.
Just being in communication, and I always kind of say err on the side of caution and get there earlier than you think you might, because we don't want you to miss that.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah,
And for the surrogate, planning out, even if the baby does arrive sooner than planned, that she has childcare, some type of plan in place for her own kids or child because
absolutely.
they're all mothers, and so there's planning that goes into delivering a baby for your own children. So being prepared and having
Right.
things planned out, having your
Right.
go bag, and all of that.
Having all that ready. And that's, again, that's one of those, like, we need to have those conversations. What is it? We're going to write up a birth plan together, and we're going to include things like, because again, everyone's going to try to be so polite, and I'm like, let's just have these conversations, because sometimes the surrogate's going, well, I want my kids to come see the baby,
Yeah.
and is that okay? Well, let's find out. Let's have these conversations. And
Yeah, let's not wait
um
until you're, in
or the,
labor and
yes,
wondering.
yeah, like, and intended parents too, their questions are like, do we have our own room at the hospital? Do we, like, how do we, what do we do? We want to give her privacy. And so we're going to have all those conversations, and you have them at your match meeting some, but then we have it again kind of as we're getting closer to delivery, is what are those expectations for giving everyone, intended parents and surrogate, the privacy they want in those moments and need, and how visitation is handled and things like that. And that gets communicated with the hospital as well, because thank goodness hospitals are really strict about who's coming and going, especially when there's
Right,
a new baby involved, and who it's going home with, and all those things.
right. I
Yeah,
love that. I think that's one thing that really stands out to me about Giving Tree is that everyone is working so well together internally, and everyone is just so respectful of both parties that we're trying to really be as neutral as possible because we want this to be the experience that each party wants it to be as closely as possible to that. And so it just is such a standout to me here that we really work hard to get everyone feeling that way. And sometimes that is compromise, but that everyone is working hard to make sure that everyone is feeling supported and heard in what they want this experience to be.
1,000%. And yeah, I mean, that's the goal, and that's why it's so important to work, with a great agency like Giving True, because that's we really want you to feel supported. And I'll say it again, we want you to enjoy this process as much as possible, and that's not possible if you're trying to organize it. Like that's just, oh, I couldn't even imagine. Like
I
that's
can't either. There's so many steps, and I can't imagine going through that alone
you're
without
gonna get something
this.
wrong, and, we would want it to be something major, like the parentage paperwork that your
Right.
case coordinator is gonna work with your attorneys on and things like that. There's just so many crucial things to make sure everything goes smoothly, and,
Mhm.
um, it really truly is, I know I'm, again, speaking for everyone at Giving Tree, but it really is an honor and a privilege to be able to be on this intimate journey, with everybody. Like it's such um, a special, vulnerable, intimate process. And, I know we just take that really seriously and are grateful to be a part of it.
Yeah. If you are interested in this experience as a gestational carrier or as an intended parent in our program here at Giving Tree, you can scan this QR code and it will take you to our application and no requirements, no strings attached. You can speak to one of our real employees and talk about what this experience could look like for you and join this family. Well, Sarah, I loved this conversation so much. I can see why your clients feel so supported by you. You just are such a real talker that the experience is just so real, and I think there is a balance of not sugarcoating things in
Mm.
this process because it doesn't serve anyone well to tiptoe around sometimes hard topics, and you're so good at informing and supporting, and so I really appreciate you joining this episode and talking through what the steps look like post match. And I love working with you. So thank you
Well,
again.
thank you so much. I had a blast and would love to be invited back. And I'm
Really.
just so grateful to get to work with you as well.
Giving trees surrogacy.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might find it just as thought-provoking.